Welcome to Death Holler, the place of haunted hearts and haunted homes. We welcome you to Death Manor, the home that boasts the most ghosts. Come on in. We've been expecting you. Take a look around. You might see someone that you recognize. Do you hear those voices? That's just the Reverend Dr. Death and Llareyna. They're so happy to see you. Sit back and relax. Make yourself at home. Your new home. And remember, when you're in Death Holler, listener discretion is always advised. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hey, Llareyna, what's been going on in your world? What besides real world horrors that you've been getting into?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just trying to get over the horrors of Christmas. It's everywhere. There's a dead tree in our yard. There's a dead tree in our house. We got Christmas carcasses everywhere.
Yeah, I bet you can't. With your all's regulations, you probably can't even burn the thing, right, and get rid of it.
No, that's where you're wrong, sir.
Well, I don't know that we're supposed to, but we do.
We live in Northern California.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Northern California is where sanity resides in California.
We actually had my husband tried to burn something, and I guess it was the trash or whatever he was burning was a little wet, more wet than he expected, so it ended up just being a huge plume of smoke. And we had a cop just parked out in our front yard, kind of like, should I go check on them? Like,
yeah, it was just too. Dude, I'm so white trash. I've burned a couch in the backyard.
Did you really?
Yeah.
When did you burn the couch?
I chainsawed the couch up, and then I burned it piece by piece in the middle of the day.
God.
It was pitch black smoke coming from the backyard.
I was not present for this.
Actually, couch burning is a Kentucky tradition after the UK game. So.
Oh God.
Yeah, the whole time I was burning it it's like probably about 45 minutes of burning, and the whole time I'm thinking, it's like, cops gonna show up any minute now. Sure as shit, he never showed up. I was like, whatever, man.
As long as we keep it contained, like the cop that was in front of our house, he didn't care that there was smoke everywhere. He was just like, are they okay? Like,
yeah, the wood was just it was too wet and smoldering. No, but the couch burning, I was burning it in a 55-gallon drum that I turned into like a full right burn barrel. So I was throwing like huge pieces in that bad boy. It was going after it.
Oh my God, it gets hot. One time there was flames on the side of my house. It just looked like hell.
Okay,
it was hell.
Side
in my
note,
backyard.
So me and my buddy over here drinking beers after I made the burn barrel. We were testing it out, and we're just stowing stuff in there. And it got so high, it got as tall as almost at the 2-story roof in our house. And it happened to be the same time my wife came home, and she comes in the backyard, and my buddy has a fire hose or the water hose. And he's just spraying the barrel to try to get the fire to go down a little bit. And my wife comes out there. So what the fuck are you guys doing? Nothing.
Yeah, I was on the second floor looking out, and there was flames just licking the side of the house and the front, my window, and I'm like, I could feel the heat. I opened up the window, I just feel a blast of heat. I'm like, well, okay, we're in hell. It's finally happened.
That's how we roll.
So, what's been happening with you, Reverend?
Well, I've not watched besides delving like totally down the rabbit hole in this whole Shining thing that we'll get into in the actual episode.
No, you went down the rabbit hole.
Many rabbit holes is the problem on that. But I did watch Color Out of Space, and which is good because it kind of ties into this a little bit, at least the rating I'm going to give something. But as far as everything else, like I mainly played some more of that Final Girl board game. I tried the Poltergeist box, which is completely different than the one I was playing before because you literally can't harm the bad guy in that one where she's a ghost. And so you have to basically just continuously try to save idiots that are like investigating the house, trying to get them out of the house before she kills them, while searching frantically for Carolyn, Carol Ann.
Yes.
And once you finally find her, assuming that you've met all the criteria, like there's one card in the deck that if she's missing her little flop-eared bunny, then she won't leave with you. So you have to go find that if that card comes out. But once you do all that, then finally you can leave, and that's how you win the game. But like it came down to the last little bit because I was running out of options, and I barely made it out with her before she took us both out. So that one was pretty interesting just because how different it played. And I was just going to give a heads up to anybody who's interested in the game. They do have like a new Kickstarter campaign coming out January 11th, and they sent out what the new boxes are going to be. And Noah's going to be interested in this. The Thing is actually one of the variants that they're going to have in this new box. It's like this abomination and this frozen outpost. And one of the twists of the game is you're trying to save these people, but they might be the Thing, you know. So
such the best story arc because everybody's an enemy. That's why that works so good.
If you want to see, here's one of the variants he's played. He's got I feel like they're not cards. Are they deck of cards or?
It's a combination. Like, I mean, if you like in the Kickstarter campaign, they have like miniatures that represents the monster, and then of course your final girls, and then you have like a deck of cards like for both the location and for the villain, and they kind of give you mix them together, and like, you know, and it's random too, because if you only take 10 cards each time, but there's like maybe 30 cards, so it always mixes it up, and they kind of give you the parameters, like suddenly the building you're in might catch on fire, so you've got to suddenly deal with that. That's one of the location, issues you got to deal with.
Yeah.
They're calling it a necromorph. That's right out of Dead Space.
That's actually the Alien set. There's one that's like an Aliens type setting. And there's another one that's kind of a Silent Hill. It's called Nurse Ratched or something, and she's it looks like a character straight out of Silent Hill.
There's different packs of characters.
The necromorph one looked pretty cool, but the Thing one, that would be the awesome. That's always the best when you don't know who the enemies are.
Oh, he loves the Thing.
It's an awesome.
I love that movie. It's a good movie.
And it's also, we might discuss this sometime on the podcast you were mentioning, but it's also got like Cold War implications and other things like that.
Big time. You don't know who the Ruskies are.
Mass formation psychosis. That's kind of a buzzword right now with all that. But anyways, they got one in there called the Intruders, and I thought that was kind of neat because it's basically the Strangers. Like three people show up to your house with masks on and just invade, and you've got to survive or whatever. And then they got one based on Little Red Riding Hood, but like instead of the big bad wolf, it's actually a werewolf. That's
I saw that one, the Bad Moon.
Yeah, so it looks really neat, and I want to see how they after seeing how much they changed the game with the Poltergeist box, because it plays completely differently. Like I even outfitted my character from the get-go, which I never am able to do whenever I was playing the Hans version, or basically the Jason Voorhees version, with a shotgun, and I could not use it because it's like you can't attack. It's like you might want to have one in case she possesses somebody, but I never ran across that whenever I was playing her. So I was just like, well, I got a useless shotgun that I'm kind of just toting along. That's not really helping me with anything. But so I just think that's going to be neat. I'm looking forward to backing that one and getting the rest of those. And I played another game called Townsfolk Tussle, and this one's a little bit different. It's kind of a boss battler. It's like you're playing like these weird, and the style of it is Cuphead. If you've ever played that video game,
oh my god, my kids love that.
Yeah, our son.
It's like that old 1920s, 30s Betty Boop style where like everything moves.
Yeah.
Everything's got kind of like a even. Just is alive basically, and they've got the reason I bring it up in a horror podcast is because not only are you trying to kill these like bad guys or whatever, but they've got some horror elements in it. Like one of the characters you can actually play is this former mayor of the town who has basically died from a virus. The virus took over his body, made his stomach into like this big giant mouth, and like you go around like just eating stuff constantly, and that's one of the characters you actually play. There's another character or another bad guy you play in the game, which is basically just an evil scarecrow. And I mean, if you just imagine like the Cuphead style, I mean, it's kind of creepy. I mean, if you watch those old Betty Boop specials, they got some creepy stuff in those. So, I think that's a pretty neat, game for maybe horror fans and fans of like that old creepy animation to kind of check out.
Oh yeah, Bendy and the Ink Machine. Definitely Cuphead. Cuphead's a little friendlier though in terms. So this one sounds like it's a mix between Bendy and Cuphead.
Yeah, it's kind of got a good mix, and then they got some kind of funny stuff in there. Like one of the characters you can play is kind of the town bully slash asshole that one of the things he can do each round, like before you go into the boss battle, is steal from like the peddler that's like selling you stuff or whatever. So just little different things like that, but. And it's got like the whole cartoon vibe where there's like stuff on the board and like you can trigger it like there's an outhouse, and whoever decides to attack the outhouse, anything within 3 spaces gets covered in shit and takes damage from it, including yourself.
Disgusting.
But that's kind of what it is.
I remember watching Betty Boop cartoons. My mom was a huge Betty Boop fan, and I remember one cartoon in particular with there's back in the day where refrigeration didn't really exist. There was this one where this guy was delivering ice, and he'd start out at the bottom of the building with this giant block of ice. And by the time he got to Betty Boop's room, which was on the top, it'd be an ice cube, and he'd just drop it in her drink. And it was just like all this work for like, I was just thinking about like how hilarious that is.
Oh my God. I don't want to brush aside your amazing games, and I don't mean to brag, but the family and I played Coraline, Beware the Other Mother.
I hate that game.
And it was
all right,
like,
you got to discuss it.
Yes. Okay. So it's the instructions are not clear at all.
Let's start with the rules of the game that are not
there.
clear
They're not
by
there.
any margin.
Yeah, there's no
of how it works.
explanation of how to set up. The board is like a piece of paper, and it's got the rooms printed on it. It's literally just a small, tiny poster. And we had to watch a YouTube video because there was no clear directions. There was instructions at how to play, and that was it. But it was like, okay, how do we get the characters on the board? And you're supposed to start off with the other mother in one room and Coraline in her room. And then you start pulling cards, and every player plays 4 different things. So they can play a card, you
get 1 action per turn, and your 1 action can be you can play a card.
No, you get 4 actions.
I know, but you can only do 1 action, one initial action. So you have 4 options of an action. 1 action is you can play a card and do what the card says. 1, you can burn the card and get 1 move. One other action is you can burn a card and reveal an item in the room, or you can burn a card and pick up an item. So you got to pick one of those actions to do each turn, and then you discharge your card, and then you pick up a Bedlam card, which is a counter card.
A Beldame or Beldam card.
It's a counter card that has a negative consequence on it, and sometimes they don't affect you, and sometimes they hurt you really bad.
So and you have the ultimate goal of the game is to you have to get to the living room after you've collected all of Coraline's items, which in the movie makes sense. The little seeing eye, or the seeing stone, and the key, and the water globe.
Yeah, I think you need to have 5 out of the 6 items at a minimum.
You have to have certain items, and then you make it to the living room, and as long as the other mother isn't in there, you can forfeit a card and win a game.
No.
No, you have to have the winning card.
You have to have the victory card.
Yes, the victory card. And the person playing has to have it. So we won the first time we all played collectively.
It got close. I didn't think we were going to win.
Yeah, but it was just horribly put together. The game's horribly put together, honestly.
The game sucks by this. So there's a card you have to complete the game. It's called a victory card. So it's in the deck. So basically you need to chew through the entire deck. Once you chew through the deck, you can't pull any more cards. So all there is bad cards at that point. So the goal is you need to get that victory card out of there. So when you have all the items you need and you're in the right room, whoever's turn it is, hopefully they have it and they can complete it. Because there's turns like when you pull a Bedlam card, it will pull some of the items from you and put them back in the rooms that you got them from. And then you need to get back to it. But every time you pull a Bedlam card, it's a bad card. And then there's this moon that's eclipsing.
Oh, yeah. If the moon eclipses, you lose.
Yeah, so sometimes you get a Bedlam card, and sometimes they'll tell you to turn the moon if there's certain conditions.
It doesn't force you. It's like you can either do this bad action or you can advance the moon.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you burn through all your cards and you discharge them,
you kind of have to advance the moon.
You have to advance the moon.
Yeah, it was weird. And then it got down to me, and the only card I had was the victory card. And fortunately, that was it. We were where we needed to be. We won. Okay, great. But if we hadn't, it's like I just have to keep pulling bad cards.
See, I want to play that one game that I got you, Death at the Dive Bar.
Yeah. Well, we probably need to move forward from the games though. But we need to play that one.
They're all like horror games. Like, they're to a degree.
We're like 13 minutes into the cold open.
Whatever. Death at the Dive Bar. I thought Death at the Dive Bar is basically like Clue, but it takes place at some rundown dive bar where it interacts with the parking lot and everything, and you're trying to figure it out. It's like more of a modern, think of it as white trash Clue.
That's exactly what it is. Oh my God. Well, should we, I think I hear people at the door. Should we let our guest in?
I think that they've waited long enough.
All right, let's do it.
I'm your host, the Reverend Dr. Death, and I would welcome you to Death Holler, but you, dear listener, have always been here. Joining me as always is the only entity capable of making Ms. Massey cry, my co-host with the most, Llareyna, who is joined by Noah. What's happening in room 237, guys?
You know what the funny thing is? I tell my wife this. That's my tech number at work.
That's his employee number.
That number is so common all the time, everywhere. I think it's almost like a sign that I'm destined to an early death. I swear to God, that number is such a frequent number that pops up. And it was so funny. It's funny every time I watch it because sometimes I forget that in The Shining, the room was 237. And as soon as I see it, I was like, oh, yeah, that's right.
Well, we'll get into this later, but one of the theories that 237 represents work is like a number. So that's funny that's your work number. So.
Yeah, destined to work forever.
Oh my God! And I'm the evil entity woman in 237. You just found your doom through me.
She was hot, but then as time went on, you realize.
Hey! Okay, we're muting him.
That's what happens. So when you take a girl home, she's hot, and then when you wake up, that's what you're getting.
Just don't look in a mirror. That's the main
just don't.
Oh God.
Well, if you didn't know, today we're discussing the most famous haunted horror film of modern cinema, or at the very least, the most analyzed. We're talking about the 1980 Stanley Kubrick classic, The Shining.
Don't be contacting Willie when you're using the Shining.
The Shining.
But before we get lost in a frozen hedge maze of symbology and hidden meanings within the Overlook Hotel, a bit of podcast business. If you're enjoying the podcast, we would appreciate if you could take the time to like, comment, and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you prefer. It helps us get more visibility on podcast listings and helps us grow. We appreciate everyone who listens and hope you enjoy the show. Whew. All work, no play makes the Reverend something.
Go a little crazy.
Don't mind if I do. Attack of the bees.
Oh, God.
That's as good timing as what that is.
Was that, do we need to attack the bees? No, I was kidding.
Yes.
Oh, hold on. I got music for that. Oh, God, that was not it.
Technical difficulties.
Hold on. We're gonna have a little fun right now. We're gonna figure out which one is Attack of the Bees.
What is that? What is that? What is it? Oh no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah! Open my eyes!
So in this Attack of the Bees, I'm bringing up the movie We Are Still Here, which is a 2015 film from director Ted, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's like I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Geogheghan.
That's not the one with Nicole Kidman, is it?
It is not. This one is kind of an indie film, kind of done in the same style as The House of the Devil, although not as authentic to the time period, and not as good of a film in my opinion, but it's still interesting. The principal players in this one is Barbara Crampton, who plays Anne Sacchetti, who's the grieving mother in the film. Barbara Crampton's been in everything horror related. Just to name a few: Reanimator, From Beyond, where she plays kind of a therapist turned sex crazed dominatrix. The Puppet Master, You're Next. And she's in a new movie on Shudder called Jacob's Wife. She's classic horror film actress. We have Andrew Sinising, who plays Paul Sciacchetti, who's the sympathetic husband. He's played in a few horror films like Last Exorcism 2, Camera Obscura, Terror Trap. We have Lisa Marie playing Mae Lewis, who's kind of a hippie psychic in the movie. And she's been in a ton of stuff with Tim Burton, like Mars Attacks, Sleepy Hollow, Ed Wood. She played Vampira in that one. And she was also in The Lords of Salem, which was probably one of my favorite Rob Zombie films. We have Larry Fessenden, who plays Jacob Lewis, who's who's a hippie as well, and a friend of Paul. He's played in a ton of like B horror films, Wendigo, Depraved, Jacob's Wife. He plays with Barbara Crampton in that one. And we have Monty Markham, who plays Dave McCabe, who's a creepy neighbor. And the only thing I saw that he'd been in that horror fans might know or might be interested in is Reborn. But basically the synopsis of this film is that a grieving couple trying to get away from memories of their recently deceased son moved to a small country home, and the mother begins experiencing supernatural phenomena that makes her think that the spirit of her son is trying to communicate with them, but something much darker is residing within the house and actually causing all the things to happen. It turns out that the spirits of the vengeful prior residents begin claiming the lives of those who enter the home. Basically, the gist of it is, just kind of spoiling the plot of it. Like the creepy neighbor guy, McCabe, comes over and he's trying to get them to. He's acting like he's welcoming them to the town, and there's something off from the get go because the woman who's with him kind of keeps letting Barbara Crampton know, like through her visual cues, that like you get out, you need to leave now. And
I think I've seen this.
Barbara Crampton. Go ahead.
I think I've seen this, and if I remember, the entity is like a charred black thing. Yes,
yep. It is. It's great. Yeah, the visual effects are great as far as like the effects
it's creepy
of
as
the
fuck.
burned like.
Yeah, I think we have it.
And it's interesting because it's a kind of a different take on the horror, like the haunted house vengeful spirit thing, which is the reason I brought it up on this episode. It kind of goes along with The Shining in that respect. But like in this one, it's not so much that like the house or the spirits inside of it are wanting to claim the lives of the couple that's moved in. They're just presented as sacrifices. What the spirits have been wanting to do for years is kill the townsfolk, including McCabe's, character, who basically burnt them alive inside the home or tried to, and then as a way, and that's kind of what I think they say 20 or 30 years like this, the house demands a sacrifice, and and so the ghosts are trying to basically get back at the people who cursed them to that fate.
If I remember,
so
I don't think I thought it was like a foreign movie that was dubbed over in English. Or am I wrong?
No, this one's not. I'm because all the actors are American as far as I'm aware of. And
maybe I'm thinking something that was similar to this. I remember watching this, but it's been like, I want to say it was been like 5 years, 6 years ago.
It was made in 2015, so
yeah,
about...
I'm trying to remember it.
It's the special effects and the way they kind of ramp things up. It's a good little indie film. Like I said, they tried to go for that 1970s style, which doesn't really, and kind of in the vein of The Shining, but like it doesn't really like pull it off as well as like The House of the Devil did, was that late 70s, early 80s thing that it went for. So
House of the Devil.
But really? It does have more action going on, so Llareyna might like it slightly better. It does have at least
I'll add it to the list of considerations.
So we just watched that new Resident Evil movie, and the whole time she was losing her mind when we were watching that.
Yeah, but I watched it.
Yeah, she told me about that. I told her before she went into it that the scenes, especially with the flashlight where it's off and on,
Oh,
and
yeah.
on, and Chris
I
is
was
trying to fight
I
off.
was anticipating that like a heart attack. Okay, I was like, it's gonna happen, and every turn I was like, it's gonna happen, but it wasn't happening. And then when it finally happened, I was like, I can't take this. Like, I got up and grabbed a cookie. Like,
Yeah,
it hurt.
they did a good job of making that movie. That actually was pretty more representational of what I was expecting from the original Resident Evils.
Well, that's like I was saying with it. I mean, you can actually sit there and if you're a fan of the games, you can actually call some of the ways that the plot's going to move forward, which some people may or may not appreciate. But I mean, I think that's proves that the movie tried to stay to what it was. It's a source material. But the strange thing is, and I discussed this with Llareyna offline, or off the podcast, I don't understand why the fans are like bitching about this movie so much. It's like, well, I don't really like the monster at the end of it because it looks kind of fake, and then like I don't really like how they did. And I'm just like, you're never going to get a perfect scene for scene representation of this, and especially in a movie form. You might if it was like a Netflix series. But you've got to, I mean, it's like me, and we can even discuss it when we're with the movie that we're discussing on this episode. I'm very prepared anymore. Like if I'm watching a Stephen King adaptation, that I'm not going to get what was in the book. Like I'm just not going to get it. Like even if they attempt to do that, they're still going to be missing. I mean, you can't take the medium and like fully translate it over. You can try, but you're going to have to do some changes to get it, because it's going from just like the written medium to like one that's visual, and there's certain things that has to be changed up for that.
Well,
and in a video game, it's visual to visual, but at the same time, they can't. I mean, there's no way you can fit that like a 60-hour or 40-hour game or whatever it is in a 2-hour movie. You're just going to have to concede things.
Yeah, and the thing is too is that everyone plays the game differently. I know it's kind of standard. It's like, okay, here's the game from this character's view, this character's view, this character's view. So it's pretty standard, and what you do as a player is going to be different. So you can't sit there and be like, well, this isn't how I played the game. It's not going to be how you played the game. And it's funny because online, the biggest complaints I had was how Leon was as a character. They made him a big old wuss. How Jill was, she wasn't as diligent. And that it kind of mixed up the first and second game a little bit. Like it kind of had elements of both games. And I'm like, one, if I'm playing the video game, Leon's going to be exactly like he was in the movie.
No. They actually the chronological events map.
Yes,
because
I think they do too.
I know, but if you play the game, you understand that the same. Like once you read all the data and all the pieces of paper from both games, you understand that Resident Evil 2 is happening at the same time Resident Evil 1 was.
Yes, I'm aware of that,
yeah.
but these are people that think they've played the games or think that they know, and they're like, I don't like that they did it that way. And I'm like, calm down. How was that first Resident movie that ever came out? How was that compared to the game?
Yeah. That was
I
way
mean,
off.
I'm not going to lie. Like, yes, the first movie wasn't like the game, but if you don't sit there and compare it the whole time, if you just know that this is like in the universe.
Well, it's not even that, but the idea of what Raccoon City was supposed to be was a small podunk town on the edge of collapse.
Like it was in this film.
Yeah, but if you watch the other movies with that one Mila Jovovich, Raccoon City was like a bustling city.
Yeah, so it was like this whole...
it was never supposed to be that.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a decrepit city. That was the whole reason Umbrella was there.
I'm just saying I still enjoyed the film, even though I could have sat there and been like, well, this isn't like the game at all. It's like...
I'm critical about stuff, and I thought they did a good job of pulling it off.
Yeah.
I love the movie, but I mean, and I understand because Leon's my favorite character in the series, and I understand what they're talking about. He's the comic relief for the first part of it, but he actually is one of the few people in the movie that has like a character arc and goes from being the bumbling rookie to actually the character you kind of see in the game.
It's because of what he experienced, he became who he was. Like he fucking squared up at the end.
Yeah, and I don't understand, and it actually, in a roundabout way, it actually makes more sense in the game because, I mean, you take a rookie cop thrown into this zombie bullshit, him and Claire both would be, I mean, just, Claire might have had more experience, being the sister to Chris, but, I mean, you're the first team that goes in the first game are all like these highly trained professionals.
Yeah.
And, I mean, so.
And then they send in the rookies.
But then like Leon's just a rookie cop. He's not
Yeah.
training like, I mean, this FBI training or military training at the very least that Chris and some of the others have had. So I don't understand why people like, expect him to be like a, badass right from the get go. He kind of was in the game, but he probably shouldn't have been. He should have been probably more freaked out by what was going on than just like, oh, I guess I'm surrounded by zombies. Let me find a little trinket that opens up this museum door that allows me to get out of this, building that I'm in.
Hold tight, Reverend. If I plug this in right now, is it going to wonk the internet up?
Why are you trying to plug it in?
Because I'm going off of Wi-Fi right now, and we're getting some.
Okay, you should be able to plug it in. It's going to take a couple seconds to identify it.
Okay, that's fine.
But yeah.
Okay, I'll clear that out of the audio.
Yeah, but if you've watched it, the story arcs are different from the game to the actual movie, because the movie, Leon's a fucked up rookie like cop son's kid type of, like, doesn't really give a shit too much. He's just doing it to do it. And then like the video game, no, he's like a top performing guy that did pretty good, and he ends up getting transferred and he's a rookie. It's a little. They both have different story arcs.
I like the building of the character, of all of them. I think they did.
I don't think they built anything.
Not every character got built up, but I don't know. I liked where they went with it. I thought they did a great job. I wasn't a huge game. I did play the first and second games. Obviously, I ended after one of the games when I just got too scared. I couldn't play them anymore. And that's about how I felt watching this film, actually. I will probably 100% never watch it again. It was so scary to me that I was like, I can't do this. Yeah.
But I mean, going back to the We're Still Here.
Slight derail. We jumped on the Raccoon City
here.
Train.
I'm going to give this the patent pending Nicolas Cage rating, The Color Out of Space, which I just literally watched, because they do have similar kind of like builds in the movie. They both begin a little slow, and they don't really have much of a supernatural element, but whenever the supernatural elements or events show up, things just go off the rails. So it's that's kind of my comparison of the two films.
What was your opinion of Color Out of Space? Because I wanted to like the movie so much, but it was too much of a build, and too much, like, the story didn't have like any type of arc.
I thought it was okay. I mean, I've not read the Lovecraft story that it's based on, so I don't really know like originally how that was, but and there's certain elements that I thought were kind of weird. Like, I don't, I mean, it was the Nicolas Cage of it all. Like, I don't know why they had to have like him as a llama farmer or any of that shit, other than the fact that they got this weird ass scene where the llamas are all like gelled together and kind of this monstrous thing like beast. But I don't know, it's like you get to the end of it. I mean, it almost kind of reminded me of a Lovecraft story, though, the way it ended, because Lovecraft stories don't really have much of a resolution. It's like everybody kind of like goes insane, and the one investigator which is the the guy who's kind of like the water table inspector or whatever in the movie, the one person who does survive and get out of it, like they're kind of like mentally like just numb now, like they're like what they've seen is kind of like scarred them for life. So I mean, there's no really heroic moments in most of Lovecraft stuff, and that's kind of like why a lot of people gravitate toward that. But I mean, it kind of fit in that sense. Yeah, it was
to a degree,
a lot
but
of out there shit going into it. But
the Lovecraft has always had a pretty good about the story arc, and that one was just like, it didn't seem linear. There was too much moving around, and they did a horrible job of.
It's a Nicolas Cage movie.
He did a good job. I thought his character was good. His character was awesome.
He did a good job.
Yeah.
He went from like regular, just plain Jane person
to losing his mind,
Jane White guy, to Nicolas Cage, and that's exactly what you want in a Lovecraft film. I mean, he's psycho at one point.
There was just a lot of things that just kind of the way the story unfolded. They could have did better jobs of tightening it.
They probably could have, but there is one thing that I do like about the movie. There's like, certain little elements of it, like the scene that they have where Tommy Chong's character, which is kind of interesting. It's another little tie between these two movies. He's kind of like the all-seeing hippie or whatever that kind of realizes what's going on before everybody else, kind of like some Marie's character and We're Still Here. he's got like this moment where at the end of it, like they come into his like little shack that he's got, and like there's this like recording that he's done, and it's playing back at like a lower rate, so it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of got that creepy, like, you know, warbled, you know, like slowed down voice, and he's talking about like you know, they're everywhere, they're all around us, the you know, the doom is upon us. That really hit home as far as like a Lovecraft feel. Like there's elements in the movie that really hit the tone. It's just like you said, the way it's pasted together doesn't necessarily gel the best way.
Yeah. Other than that, I thought it was a good movie that built a decent amount of suspense.
Thematically, it's kind of funny that it kind of just, you know, pastes stuff together and doesn't really fit, because that's kind of what happens in the movie to most of the creatures. Like they just get combined together by this weird, you know, alien thing into like monsters that don't really fit.
That part when the son and the mom, that part was
God.
Yeah, I was like, oh. Yeah, that was.
And throwback to a discussion we previously had, that kid in the movie is actually the kid that plays the young Luke in House on Haunted Hill, the Netflix series. So.
Oh, really?
Oh, shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of good, really good creepy parts that stood out in the movie, though.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's like probably like a 6.5, 7 or something. If you're going to rate it on like out of a 10, out of our scale, it's like, you know, maybe like 2.5, 3. It's worth checking out. I mean, for horror, especially like Lovecraft fans. I mean, it has some elements in it that are worth seeing. So for sure. Moving on to the major discussion we're going to have on this podcast is The Shining, which is a 1980 film directed by Stanley Kubrick, composers Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkind. We have principal players in this, of course, Jack Nicholson, who plays Jack Torrance in the movie, who is the antagonist, depending upon which theory you believe about the movie, psycho and recovering alcoholic. Jack has been in tons of films. I mean, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1989 Batman movie. He was one of the first, and some people think the greatest Jokers in film. As Good as It Gets, Chinatown, which is a really good like new film noir type film. A Few Good Men, Wolf, The Witches of Eastwick, where he plays Satan. So
Easy Rider,
tie back to the first season.
The Easy Rider was one of my favorite movies he did.
Oh yeah, Easy Rider for sure. He was in that one.
Did you ever see him talk about that? So there's a part in the movie where because he plays that stuffy lawyer, and I guess in that movie he gets high, and that was the first time he got high in real life. It was on that set. Jane Fonda talks about it, and he talks about it. If you watch it, you can almost tell in real time. It's like it's like a part where they're at the campfire and everything. It's right before he gets beat to death.
So it's funny you say that, because in my mind, something that's always going to stick with me is I don't know if you know who Jim Brewer is. He's a comedian.
Oh yeah.
He's in, you know, Half Baked or whatever is what most people know him from. But he's always got this look about his eyes because they kind of droop that makes him look like he's high. And he said when he was working on Saturday Night Live, he was in an elevator, and Jack Nicholson was going to be a guest on the show. And he's you know, Brewer's is like starstruck by Nicholson. So like he's sitting there, and Nicholson, you know, gets in the elevator right as Jim Brewer's getting off the elevator, and you know, and Nicholson makes a point to look at him and says, you look like how I feel, or something like that, and then just kind of grins at him. So and Brewer telling that story is just great, because it just gives you that vibe that you're talking about, where, you know,
Jack Nicholson is 84 years old.
Yeah, he's up there, man. He's a classic actor, though.
He had one wife for a short span of time, and never a wife again after that. That was in the 60s. Only time he ever had a wife, and he has many of kids.
Oh my God.
Pay the kids, not the women.
Yeah.
We have Shelley Duvall in the film playing Wendy Torrance, who's the protector, ? Depending upon the theory that you're putting out there. She's the put upon wife, and possibly a psycho herself. I mean, even if you don't believe one of the theories that I'm going to bring up, she definitely breaks toward the end of the film in a lot of people's views. She, of course, was Olive Oil and Popeye.
That's all I can see her as. Like when I was like every movie she's ever made afterwards, all I think is Olive Oil.
Oh my God!
Like she looks like the character though.
Yeah,
made real.
As much of a good job she did in the movie, it's so hard not to see her as Olive Oil.
I remember her from Fairy Tale Theater.
I don't know what that is.
It was like a kids show of some sort, and she told stories.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she wore like this weird costume and told story to kids. And I used to see that at Grandma Bean's house or super early in the morning, and it was annoying as fuck, but I'd watch it. And that's all I remember her from, which is weird because it's not popular by any means.
Fairy Tale Theater.
Mm-hmm. It went on for like 5 years in the 80s or something like that.
Was it on like on PBS or something?
That's what I would imagine it to be on, but I don't know what I saw it on at Grandma Bean's house, to be honest.
She was also in a movie we've previously mentioned on the podcast, Time Bandits. She actually played the two characters that are repeatedly reborn throughout history or whatever. They're kind of like these British, fops or whatever, like these high-ranking elites or whatever that are just kind of, ridiculous. She was in Roxanne, the Cyrano de Bergerac retale or whatever that had Steve Martin as the title character. As far as horror fans are concerned, besides the Shining, she was in Casper Meets Wendy.
Oh my God.
She was in the live action version of Frankenweenie.
I saw that. I'm freaking out right now. Like Tim Burton's like one of his first films. It was one of his first films, like in college, wasn't it?
It's a short film, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember the actor's name off the top of my head, but it's one of the guys who was in Home Alone. One of the two thieves or whatever.
Daniel Stern.
Daniel Stern. He plays the dad in that one. She was in she produced a short-lived Showtime anthology called Nightmare Classics, which is like based on like an anthology series that like each episode was based upon like an older gothic horror novel, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, The Haunting of Bly Manor, basically, or The Turn of the Screw. Like there was several episodes of that, and it had fairly good critic reviews, but it just never caught on. And I was surprised to read this. She was actually the voice of one of the All Real Monsters characters.
Oh my God!
Alongside Tim Curry.
Oh my God! Hold on, I'm looking right now.
I'm curious which one.
She was
like or something. It started with O.
Oka. Hold on, I'm gonna get a picture real quick.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, this wasn't a very common character.
God, I loved that show so much.
Yeah, she wasn't one of the main ones by any means, but I just thought that was interesting that she was on that. That kind of, because I feel like that was a lot later than most of the stuff that she's most commonly known for.
Yeah.
We have Danny Lloyd playing Danny Torrance in the movie, who's the son. Psychic ? I know we'll get into that. I know that's the whole gist of The Shining, but I don't know if there's theories that's bullshit. An abused child ? We'll get into that dark theory too. The only movie that he did besides this that I'm aware of is he played the father of one of the baseball players in Dr. Sleep. He has like a short cameo. Mike Flanagan, who did The Haunting of Hill House, made the sequel to The Shining, Dr. Sleep, based it more. It's like more of a combination, and we'll discuss this movie next, in the next episode. But it's like a combination of the Stephen King book and the movie, Kubrick movie, and it's kind of interesting that he brought Danny Lloyd back for that part. He even mentioned something about he's proud of his son, who's because the character's kind of psychic like Danny is, so it's kind of funny that he's the father of the psychic boy in that movie.
Oh my God.
We have Scatman Crothers, who plays Dick Halloran, psychic ? We'll get into that. Who's the cook at the Overlook and a piss poor hero. He does absolutely jack all nothing to save anybody.
Nothing. And I'm sorry, but when he was talking about The Shining, because he's the reason we find out about The Shining, I couldn't help but think about the cunning from Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. And I'm like, that's a wish list knockoff of The Shining. They're like, we have the cunning. And it was only people of color that had it.
And it's funny too because he talks about how he shared that with his grandma, I believe it was.
Yeah,
they communicated that way.
Told you they fucking Chilling Adventures of Sabrina totally fucking took it from The Shining.
They took a lot from several things. We talked about Rosemary's Baby and several, so it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't tap into that. He was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Nicholson, and they were actually good friends, and that's how he got into the movie. Nicholson recommended him. This is surprising. He did the voice for Hong Kong Phooey.
The black guy?
Oh, yeah, okay. The black dude.
Yeah.
So Nicholson was the one that recommended him for the scene, or for the role.
Yeah, the one that got him in the movie. But I just thought it was funny. He was the voice for Hong Kong Phooey. That was who did the voice for that character.
I just liked his room. He had the smoking hot black girls posters up. I was like, hell yeah, dude.
Well, there's a lot of...
You do good to watch yourself.
Oh, my bad. You just want to keep my opinions to myself then?
Yes.
There's a lot of theories about like sexuality and stuff that kind of tie in the movie too, so that might have been intentional. But
I was laughing at all the pictures of hot, sexy babes behind him. I'm like, you don't get that right away from his character. Then you see him in that. But then again, wasn't he in like a hotel? He was in Florida or something vacationing?
Yeah.
He was at home.
Yeah.
No, he was vacationing in Florida.
Yeah, he was. Well, yeah, he was. I think he lives in Florida.
Oh, okay.
At the Overlook. So, he played in the Aristocats, playing Scat Cat of all things. The animated Disney film. He was in for horror fans. Besides The Shining, he was in Deadly Eyes and Twilight Zone the movie.
Ew.
Yes, he was the dude that was in the Kick the Can skit. I'm serious. That was him, wasn't it?
It probably was. I didn't go farther into where he was at in this.
If I remember if I remember the episode in that Twilight Zone movie, that little skit one was him. He's a traveling guy that goes from retirement home to retirement home,
that was him. Yeah, and he was the guy who brought the youth back to everybody. Yeah, that was the one. I know what you're talking about.
He's helping all the old people relive the youth that their dementia and just falling apart. He gave them an opportunity to be young just for a little bit and rekindle it.
That scene is a great. I mean, that part of the movie is a really great little part anthology of that movie. It's probably one of my favorites. We have Barry Nelson, who is playing Stuart Ullman in the movie, manager of the Overlook and possibly an ambassador for the ghosts that reside there. And that's one of the theories that's out there.
What for the ghost? Hold on. Back a master for the ghost?
An ambassador for the ghost. And But that ties in. I mean, it's some of the theories and the fact it goes into an alternate ending that wasn't actually that's not available for the movie. That I'll get into that in the trivia here in a second. But there was actually another ending to the movie.
Oh, see, I wasn't aware of that.
So the synopsis, and I'm just going to go over this quick because basically everybody knows The Shining by osmosis at this point. Jack Torrance, a recovering alcoholic and former school teacher, who was fired because of his anger issues, takes on a job as a caretaker of the Overlook Hotel over the winter months with his wife and son, Wendy and Danny. The intent is that he can work on his play/novel, depending upon which version you're talking about. But slowly, Jack is driven mad by the isolation and possibly by the evil spirits, depending upon how you view this. And Danny, who's rumored to have the shine, extrasensory perception, sees and experiences a series of horrific images that foreshadow the death that will result from his father's psychosis. Wendy and Danny barely escape from the axe-wielding Jack, who is shown to freeze to death in the infamous hedge maze. And we close by showing a picture of the July 4th celebration where Jack was front and center, but it was taken in the 20s, showing that he was always at the hotel, or depending upon how you view it. Before we get into this, we can just discuss versions in other media. Of course, The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror 5, which was season 6, episode 6. What'd you all think of that with groundskeeper Willie?
What's not to think? That's a classic in terms of a cartoon version. And I know that because the kids haven't seen The Shining, right? I don't think they've seen the movie.
I think they have. I think Nona has.
Okay, I feel like if we played The Shining, if it was the first time, they'd be like, "Oh my God, this is from The Simpsons." They wouldn't know that The Shining was the first one, and then The Simpsons just did, a short little cartoon film of it.
I think just discussing it, one of my favorite things about it, and Noah brought this up, I think, on a prior podcast, is don't contact Willie between 4 and 5. That's Willie's time.
Yeah.
I love that line.
Well, the thing is, if you're a kid, you don't quite understand what that means. If you're an adult, you're like, oh, yeah? It's Willie's time? What's Willie doing?
What's Willie doing with his Willie?
And I love the fact that it's not really the isolation of being in Mr. Burns' hotel. It's the fact that there's no beer and there's no TV. Is what drives Homer crazy in that.
Which was true kind of in that time frame, That was one of the main sources of entertainment. I mean, it started with radio, and then we got TVs in the house, and now we have so much to entertain us. There's no excuse to ever say that you're bored.
Well, not that too, but I mean, the average person back then consumed a lot of alcohol and cigarettes. I think that was pretty rampant. I mean, your doctor would prescribe you cigarettes when you were pregnant. I mean,
keep that baby small.
I mean, seriously. So if you understand that, then you get a better context. See,
it was actually funny. That was one of the first questions they had, I think, in Rosemary's Baby, whenever she was pregnant with the baby, was like, how many drinks can I have? That's her primary concern when she got pregnant.
Well, isn't that a thing in Italy still too, or I should just say in general in Europe and everything, where that you can have like a half a glass of wine and they encourage it daily or something like that, or once in a while?
I think they encourage like a drink of alcohol generally for like heart health, regardless. Like that's just like a medical.
Well, the big thing too is it's not so much heart health. It causes an autoimmune response when you can consume alcohol. So anytime you have alcohol, what it does, it triggers your white blood cells to do like a natural sweep of your body, kind of looking for things. So if you drink this little bit of alcohol daily, it triggers that natural autoimmune response.
So I've been doing it wrong.
And wine in particular, though, because of the grapes and being distilled down, it also has an extra ingredient in it that's healthy for like arteries and that sort of thing.
And antioxidants.
Yes, the antioxidant part of it. But yeah, that one, the Simpson Treehouse of Horror episode is just, most people know that one. I mean, that's a pretty standard one. It was actually there's whole scenes like redone completely in the new in Ready Player One from The Shining. It's like one of the major plot points in the movie. It's not in the book, but it's in the movie because they wanted to go back and use WB or Warner Brother properties. There's a whole scene where the main characters have to go into the Overlook and they have to face the ghost in order to get through one of the challenges to be able to advance in the competition. And they they digitally rework everything to put the characters in the Overlook and seeing the Grady twins and other things like that.
Full disclosure, I have not seen Ready Player One. I think husband and the kids have.
Yeah, I want to say it's the second quest they go on.
Yeah, it's the second one, because the first one they're doing a race, I believe it is, and that's where he learns to go backwards, and that's how he wins it.
I have many of intentions of seeing that film.
The hotel redoing The Shining is it's pretty spectacular how they work that in. I mean, it's pretty impressive whenever you watch it. And of course, it's redone to a certain extent in Dr. Sleep, which is the sequel. We'll get into that when we discuss it. But there's at the end of the movie, they actually go back to the Overlook, and some people are hit or miss on this. Now, I mean, we'll get into the discussion of that whenever we discuss that or that movie. But I think that they went the right route of, instead of trying to make people or digitally try to recreate like Jack Nicholson, they took, and it's actually the father from The Haunting of Hill House, the young father, who's Elliot in the original E.T.
Yeah.
They take him and have him just kind of dress like Jack Torrance and kind of give and he doesn't try to go out of his way to sound like, Jack Nicholson. He just kind of does his own interpretation of it. And a lot of people are kind of like, he's no Jack. And of course he's not. I don't think anybody really could be, but it's a good enough, stand-in that it kind of fits the bill, and it also serves a purpose of, when you get right down to it, the way they did Dr. Sleep, it's spoiler alert, Dick lives in that version in the sequel, which he clearly dies in this. So there's got to be, I mean, it's kind of like there's a twist on it anyways from the get-go. So they kind of like, kind of just do a twisted version of Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall and, kind of go from there.
I don't know why people are so hung up on stuff being exactly like it was made originally. Like identical. It doesn't have to be identical.
I don't know. I think a lot of people were like, around this time this came out, some of the Marvel movies were doing some of that crazy shit they were doing, or like having a de-aged, Kurt Russell.
Michael Douglas.
And so like people were expecting that, but budgets. I mean, if you can't do it right, don't do it. And I think that's what Mike Flanagan was looking at. He's like, we can't achieve that.
Yeah.
Let's do the best we can going around it, because if you don't do that, then you get Princess Leia from Rogue One, which is a horrible, horrible version of that.
Yeah.
So,
and
that's with Disney's own budget too. So I mean,
what?
It's just a few seconds.
Yeah, but when you have a couple $100 billion of capital,
that's true.
And then guys online with the computer at the house can reinterpret it with a deep fake, and nobody else is involved other than the AI. Like, what's going on there? So the dude at home can make a better version than a multi-billion-dollar studio.
Yeah, obviously. I will blame Kathleen Kennedy for that one. She greenlighted it.
It's her fault.
That's true.
Burn her. She's a witch.
And before I get into the discussion of the actual Shining movie, I have to discuss the miniseries, the Stephen King miniseries that came out in the 90s. It stars the people who starred in that was the Jack was played by Steven Weber, who I personally know the most from Wings, that the NBC sitcom. Which I did not know until I was looking around about this. That was actually part of the Cheers / Frasier universe. Like, it had its own universe way before that was ever a thing.
Oh, really?
Because Frasier, I happened to, the other night I just turned on one of those Pluto channels where they play like the same shows like over and over, and it was a Wings channel, and I just happened to see the episode where Fraser Crane and his wife Lilith, or whatever her name is, were on a plane chartered by chartered by Tim Daly and Steven Weber's characters, and the whole episode was about Fraser being like this big basically fraud or what, and one of the main characters of the show calling him out on it. And I was just like, and I looked it up, and it like they were all written and directed by the same three guys, like all three shows. Which is kind of interesting. That was, kind of the metaverse before it happened. You know what?
It's funny you say that, because they all have like a similar feel that Cheers had to a degree.
Yeah, kind of the ensemble cast and playing off like the relationships more than anything else.
Yeah, it's for whatever reason, there's this kind of thing that kind of hits, like there's a similarity between those three different shows.
I really like Steven Weber as an actor when he shows up and stuff. He's got a charisma to him that's interesting. Wendy is played in the miniseries by Rebecca De Mornay, who's most famous for The Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
I remember that. I was like, I know that name.
And Danny is played by a young actor named, or at the time, Cortland Mead, who's one of his biggest claims of fame was he played in The Little Rascals in '94.
Oh my God.
The miniseries definitely follows King's novels better than the movie. It's not a secret to say that Kubrick went out of his way to change things to fit his vision better than than going strictly by the novel. And King hated, and I'll bring that up in a minute, but King hated the Kubrick movie so much for changing certain elements that's why he went ahead and redid it as a miniseries. And like one of the things that he changed back was he shows a more sympathetic Jack before he goes crazy. Like, he's not as resentful of Wendy. He treats her better, before the hotel starts working on him. And honestly, it's the best part about Weber's performance in the movie is you really feel for his version of Jack up until the point that he makes the change.
Yeah.
The problem with that is he's not as good of a villain type actor as Nicholson, and he does not pull off those scenes even a fraction as well as Nicholson.
I hated that miniseries. Like, I know what you're talking about when they did that, and what was 90s or early 2000s?
It's early 90s, or it's the 90s, yeah, late 90s, I think. Actually,
wait, which one are we talking about?
The miniseries that they did,
Dr. Sleep.
No.
Oh.
The one he's talking about right now.
The Shining.
Okay.
They redid it in the 90s. I don't know if it was early or late.
We have discussed several
it is
90s
so bad.
miniseries that Stephen King had done. And what did we conclude about that time era in his miniseries? Because I constantly bring up the Langoliers, and that's why I did not watch any miniseries from Stephen King.
Stop doing coke. That's what happens. See, what happens when you get off of drugs? Shit goes sour.
Did he get off of drugs in the late 90s? I thought or in the early 90s?
Yeah, early 90s, yeah. That's one of his things about when we mentioned the Needful Things. That book was written right after he got sober, like late 80s, early 90s, and he feels like it's one of his worst books because of the fact that I guess he didn't have like the drug-fueled craziness going on.
I suppose.
You know what you didn't realize? The movie Needful Things was about his needing coke. You just totally missed it.
But I mean, it does. The miniseries goes back and it puts more it puts the supernatural emphasis way back into it. It shows that Danny is for sure psychic. He has psychic abilities. So does Dick. It shows that, it shows a different version of Wendy who's more confident. She's a better protector of Danny, and she's it plays her character up more as a wife too to Jack, and than Duvall's version. It's and even hints like the novel does that maybe Wendy and Jack both have a version of the Shine, because there's a line mentioned in both the novel and in the miniseries that they both have like their ability to read people in different ways. And it's assumed that that's where Danny got his abilities from, is he inherited them from his parents, because that's the same thing with Dick. Dick said he got his abilities from his grandma, and so there's and the theory is that the reason that Jack never really outright was a psychic in any way, shape, or form is because he dulled his senses with alcohol for so long, and then whenever he went off the alcohol, they were coming back and they helped feed the hotel. In addition to Danny's own abilities and maybe even Wendy's, and that's what and Dick never anticipated that all three of them would contribute to the manifestations becoming more real. So that's why he was a little bit more like he kind of played it off. He's like, well, these are just images. When he's talking to Danny, they won't hurt you, but he didn't anticipate three psychics bringing them out. Yeah, it's kind of the gist of the novel, and in the miniseries. It's. I think, and of course they changed a lot toward the end. It shows the original ending where Jack succeeds in stopping the ghost from getting to the boiler, and the boiler basically burns up the hotel and ends the Overlook. And it also shows Danny graduated from high school toward the end of it, and Danny it's revealed that every time he sees Tony is his future self, which is like the novel, and it kind of. And something that it kind of goes away from the novel in a bit of a sense is it kind of gives more, actually, this might be in the novel. It's been a while since I read it, but it shows Jack's spirit at Danny's graduation, and he tells basically Danny that he loves him and he's proud of him. So it gives the resolution that, obviously it's not in the Kubrick film for reasons that Kubrick had. I don't know. It depends. I mean, the acting in the movie is or in the miniseries is different. Obviously, Weber was better at the sympathetic Jack, but he couldn't pull off any of the villain versions. We don't have any of Wendy is stronger, but then De Mornay is I don't know. She's one of those women that's no matter what she does, she's got some kind of sex appeal to her, and so there's a weird sexiness that she adds to the character that's not really in the book. And I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing that's thrown in there that I think just because she was the actress playing the part. And then the Cortland Meade who plays the kid, he's better than Danny Lloyd in a lot of scenes, because Danny Lloyd's obviously not really given a whole lot to work off of, or at least not in my opinion. But he's a weird, he's terrible in a lot of his scenes too. His acting is just so flat and awful, which is part of the problem that happens whenever you work with child actors. You either get a really good one like Macaulay Culkin, or you get Cortland Meade, who's just kind of there and kind of delivers his lines as flat as possible and doesn't really interact much. But if you want the match to the novel, it's way better in that sense. But the visuals, the acting, the potential allegories that are there, they're all lost. Like King has none of the vision that Kubrick had, like at all.
Yeah, you know what? I am gonna say, because I'm browsing through, screen grabs of the Shining miniseries, and they made a lot of the characters actually look like horror characters, like monsters.
The Miss Massey in that is actually very well done, even to this day, as far as the effects, because they kind of did some kind of thing with the skin they applied to the actress that looks like it's, like the kind of like if you were like drowned, like a drowned victim, like how the skin would like, wrinkle up.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, it's like super translucent and thin. Like it's really creepy. Like they sell that element way better.
I see Jack. There's one scene where it's Jack screaming. He looks like a straight up dead, like corpse attacking his wife. His eyes are white. They're red around. His teeth are all rotted. He looks like a legit fucking monster. There's a butler that looks like a fucking zombie. And yes, Miss Massey looks fucking horrific.
Yeah, they really went far. I mean, but that was more, like I said, he was trying to tie more into the supernatural elements than Kubrick. So that's why they played that up more. And then the some of the stuff and it helps Weber, the fact they applied that stuff to him. But like, I mean, Jack Nicholson is more, he's more scary and more terrifying just without the makeup applied, which is, a sign of how good of an actor he is.
It's human horror, and it's more terrifying.
You know what the biggest thing that sells The Shining consistently is not even so much the story. It's all the way that he does, the way that the music was laid out in the suspense building and
we'll get to that.
Cuts. Yeah,
we're going to get to that. That's part of the discussion.
That's a whole algorithm of the film, honestly.
Yeah, if you understand more than anything, that is what drives suspense more than anything.
So getting into the movie, I'll throw some trivia out there first. Kubrick was notorious for requiring an excessive number of takes for his scenes. Some say this was because he was perfectionist. Others argue it was because he was making the shit up as he went, and he honestly, and their argument is that he took so many takes because he made the movie in the editing room. Like he took a million different, or a bunch of different takes, and then once he got while he was editing, he was like, well, this is the route I want to go with, so let's use that tape, to kind of steer the narrative in this direction.
Well, the hubby was talking about, and I've heard this, and I'm sure you have as well, I'm sure it's part of our discussion, how Shelley Duvall, Kubrick constantly had her on edge. He was always fucking with her to keep her scared the whole time.
I've got that coming up.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense to what you're just saying right now, because if he were to actually piece together a film based off of different cuts he has, she constantly needs to be on edge. She constantly needs to be in the mode that she was in the film.
He didn't just do it to her. I'll get into that in a minute, too.
Oh, awesome.
So he spent 3 days filming the Here's Johnny scene.
Oh, my God.
And that required 60 doors to film. And the reason it took so many is because they say that Nicholson was actually a former fireman before he was an actor, and he was so good at cutting those damn doors down, and that they didn't break through them as slowly as Nick or as Kubrick wanted. That's the reason they had to keep replacing them and have him go out a different way about bashing the door in. It took 127 takes to get the scene with Wending walking backwards and fending off Jack with a baseball bat.
That was a good scene. And I was expecting her to fall down, and who knows, she probably did. That's probably why it took so many takes, but it was something about that specific scene that I was watching. I was like, this is good. It's like I'm expecting her to fall. She's not falling. She's swinging at him. She's terrified. I don't know. Something about that scene flowed really well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of that perfection. I think he's a little bit of both. I think he was perfectionist, but he knew, but the perfectionist part of it was that he knew he could take the scenes later and work like a narrative around even just the individual scenes. Because when we start getting the discussions about this movie, I think the man loved layering different meanings and symbols in the things, and I think that was the reason he did so many takes, was because he could do that after the movie was done. The 127 takes was so many that actually made the Guinness Book of World Records, by the way.
Holy shit. Has anyone topped it yet? I'll Google it.
it took around 100 scenes or takes for the scene with Dick and Danny talking about The Shine, and with Jack throwing the tennis ball against the wall. And this goes along with what you were talking about, with the way he treated Duvall. After 40 takes of the Dick Halloran death, Nicholson had to actually step in and ask Kubrick to give the old man a break, because Kubrick wanted 75 takes of that death scene, which they had to repeatedly set up for and go through, with the axe going into his, I guess, like a prosthetic chest and all that. And Scatman Carruthers reportedly broke down crying after all these takes, and begged the director to tell him what he wanted him to do in the scene to make the scene work. Like, that's how much he broke the characters down or the actors down by making them repeatedly do these things.
Oh my God. Okay, so The Shining has 2 world records. Guinness World Records. 127, obviously, for the stair scene. 148 for the shine scene with Danny and Dick Halloran.
Yeah.
Holy fuck, dude.
Now, the bleeding elevator only took 3 takes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it took them 9 days to set up and reset between each take. So it took 27 days to film that.
And I'm assuming they had a small makeshift room. Obviously, it wasn't done in the hotel. I was like, that's got to be an enclosed room of sorts.
I would hope so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but he's crazy enough. He probably wanted it authentic and filmed it somewhere, knowing him. I don't know.
Yeah.
Shelley Duvall was definitely negged by Kubrick throughout the entire filming process. He told the other cast members to keep her isolated, meaning that they couldn't associate with her outside of her scenes. He constantly yelled at her, and he even told her at one point that she was wasting everyone's time. She ended up crying so much during between her scenes on film and the way that he treated her off the camera that she became dehydrated and couldn't even cry at one point.
Oh my God!
She had to keep bottles, or she had to keep water around her to rehydrate to even be able to cry.
Goddamn.
The film. Which is the reason Nicholson has argued that she has had her role in that movie, despite a lot of people giving it shit because all she does is scream and cry, is probably one of the hardest that any actor or actress has ever done in film, because of the fact that she gave so much to the scene and so much emotion.
Yeah.
Stephen King, like I said, hates the film. He didn't like the fact that Jack was crazy before going into the Overlook, because, spoiler alert, Jack was kind of based on King at that point, a school teacher who's wanting to make it into writing, who's also addicted, and, Wendy was also, went on record as saying, is the most misogynistic portrayal of a character ever put to film, because he's one of those people that argues that she just screams and cries and has no agency for herself. She does nothing else in the film.
Hey, she dragged his body into the fucking closet and locked it.
Well, she might have done more than that when we get to the Wendy theory. King removed, or didn't like the fact that Kubrick removed all the direct supernatural references in the movie. Kubrick has said that as an atheist, he thought that the movie was more interesting as a study of human psychosis versus just having it about ghosts. And an interesting fact that it's crazy to think about, there were 3 other actors who were considered before Nicholson for playing Jack Torrance. Robert De Niro was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Kubrick supposedly saw his portrayal in Taxi Driver and didn't think that he was psychotic enough after seeing that movie, which, if you know anything about Taxi Driver, it's about a man that steadily goes crazy due to PTSD from the war and starts taking people out in mass. So that wasn't psychotic enough.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think my wife has ever seen that movie. I don't know if you'd like it.
It's actually, it almost qualifies as a human horror film, honestly.
But my most favorite part is when he takes a girl on a date and takes her to the porn theater. And she's just like, what are we doing?
Yeah, that's because he's totally lost touch, and that's his own way of connecting. The other rumor is that De Niro actually did read the script, but got such terrible nightmares from it that he refused the role. That's the other theory that floats around on the internet about that. Robin Williams was briefly considered for the character. But Kubrick saw him in Mork and Mindy and said that guy was too psychotic to play Nicholas.
Oh, okay. I mean, I can see it.
And I can't even imagine. Can you imagine the genie from Disney's Aladdin playing Jack Nicholson? He would have been doing an impression a minute whenever he, like the Here's Johnny, he would have broke into a whole Johnny Carson like impersonation at that point and went off the rails that way.
Oh, my God.
The third actor who could have played Jack Torrance would have been Harrison Ford, of all people.
No, that wouldn't have worked.
It would have been too serious. It wouldn't have been as...
Way too serious and too flat. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford is more of he's a very
cool
he
guy.
Doesn't emote very much at all, like in most of his movies.
He has that cool guy feel to him.
Yeah. The snow in the hedge maze, because I like throwing this in here. We've done it a ton for all these other movies that had snow scenes. Didn't have the onions and stuff that we had in, the
Devil and Daniel Webster.
But they did use 900 tons of crushed styrofoam and salt to make that snow in the hedge maze.
Wow.
God damn.
900 tons.
I mean, it looked like snow.
It was really good. And I like the salt part of it because, like we discussed in Legend, that's what they did to kind of give it that crystalline appearance.
Yeah,
like, where snow was like frozen overnight.
I mean, I'm sure they have the sound effects and everything, but I'm pretty sure it makes for a pretty decent sound effect as well.
Yeah, the crunching effect that goes along with it. The blood coming out of the elevator was allowed in the trailer for all viewers because Kubrick convinced the MPAA it was rusty water instead of blood.
You know they were mad when they watched the movie.
Oh my God. How
I'm
stupid.
Sure
How stupid do you have to be?
I'm sure they were sitting there watching the film like, what the fuck?
That's about it too.
I mean, can you think about how they had to get some kind of authorization for that? They had a full-blown naked woman in the film, but they were worried about blood coming out of an elevator?
Yep. Couldn't show that blood.
Okay.
Which is funny because most American films go the other way, and they don't want the nudity, but, they're fine with the gore.
With the gore, yeah. That's okay.
Well, this was this was right at the start of the 80s whenever it went the other way, and the slasher films went all gore, and if as soon as you showed any breast, there
was a scene in The Exorcist in the 80s where she fucking pegs herself with a crucifix in the vagina.
Yeah.
And they're worried about blood coming out of an elevator.
Yep.
They
allowed more things in the 70s.
Makes no sense.
What can we say? The crew needed a map for filming in the hedge maze because it was so complicated, and even got lost for 2 hours every time they filmed in there.
That was a badass hedge maze.
They built that just for that movie, so it was.
Oh, they built that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And we'll get into that, but it may or may not be based upon like Greek myth is kind of what the hint was about that. And Jack was the Minotaur. There was an alternate ending to the film that actually released in the first week with the movie whenever it was put in theaters. The scene started with Danny and Wendy in the hospital after escaping from the hotel, and they're visited by Ullman. Ullman basically tells Wendy that they never found Jack's body, and there was also no signs of anything abnormal that went on at the hotel. He ends up asking them to stay with him since they have nowhere else to go now. And as he is leaving, he hands Danny the tennis ball from the hotel, and the movie goes to a black screen with text, kind of hinting that Ullman was in with the spirits the whole time.
Huh.
Now, the saying is that Kubrick had the theaters pull that ending after the first week of showing it and had most of the copies destroyed. And I think the reason is because when he got to looking back at it, it added a little too much credence to the supernatural element.
Yeah.
And he wanted to pull back from that. And it was a cleaner ending to just show that scene zooming in on the picture that showed, Jack from 1921, basically.
Okay.
Which is that ending stands out way better. So he was smart in having them pull that.
It's got a good creep factor to it.
Halloran passes by a wreck as he drives back to the hotel where a semi has crushed a red VW Bug, and many think it's a fuck you to King from from Kubrick, because in the original novel and in the Shining miniseries, I believe the red the VW bug they drive to the hotel is red instead of yellow like it is in the movie.
Ah, okay.
This was one of the first major uses of Steadicam. A lot of the shots where you see where the big extended shots, like Noah was talking about in the previous episode, where you kind of stay with the character and it's real smooth and it kind of follows along with the characters they're walking in the different rooms. That's one of the first few times that was actually used in a movie. And it's such a major part of the movie that King himself, even though he doesn't like the movie, actually referenced it in one of his novels, The Dark Tower, The Drawing of the Three, because one of the characters in the movie or in the book discusses whenever he is seeing through the eyes of another character, it's like he references that it's like watching Danny on the track as he's going through the hotel in The Shining. Going into this a little bit before, this is more theory related stuff, but it works into the movie and kind of the trivia. This movie is one of the most modern versions of Mickey Mousing as far as the score goes of any, or there's other movies that used it since, but this movie used it like way more than most other films in modern cinema, because at the point that this movie was made, it was an outdated musical or score philosophy. And what Mickey Mousing is, for anyone that doesn't know, because I didn't know about this until I was researching all this, is it's a score technique that was made popular in the old Mickey Mouse cartoons, where every time that the actor or actress, or in this case the cartoon character, does an action or they go to speak or something, the notes in the score match what they're doing, whether it be an up or a down, like, tone or cadence or that sort of thing. The most commonly associated that most people would recognize from the movie doing this is the scene where the Here's Johnny scene, where whenever right after he says that, Wendy and the score both does that up like shriek like sound or whatever to kind of match what the actress is doing in the film. They say that it's and the theory is that it's used by some is that it's being used to symbolize the unseen corruptive force of the Overlook on the inhabitants. Like when Jack spasms in anger as he walks past the mirrors on his way to the Golden Ballroom. There's a little bit of a note uptake each time that he jerks or whatever. The score kind of matches that. Every time he throws the tennis ball, there's sharp notes to accompany that in the movie. And they also used this one musical piece called Music for Strings, Percussion, and Celesta by Bela Bartok 3 times throughout the film. And they use it in different ways throughout the different parts of the film. Like the people who broke this down says it's like a symmetrical composition or a palindrome, like the notes like ABC or repeated CBA on the other side, like, up and down. And it's used during the hedge maze scene, and some people say that's to represent the symmetry of the maze. It's also used as Danny walks in the room or toward room 237. And it's interesting because each action he takes as he's walking to the room is accentuated by the score at that point, that musical piece. And finally, it's used in the scene where Jack and Danny talk in the bedroom about whenever Danny's asking for his fire truck and he's afraid of disturbing his father's sleep. Then the interesting part about this is not only does Danny have Mickey Mouse actually on his shirt at this point, which might be hinting at the Mickey Mouse thing they're doing with the score, but Danny and Jack's first comments to each other sync up with the notes in that song or that composition piece. And whenever Danny asks the question about whether they're safe in the hotel, there's this eerie little rise and fall of the musical piece that kind of seem to think simulates the hotel answering for Jack in that moment, that as if the hotel is kind of corrupting him at that point and kind of guiding his actions even as he's talking to Danny.
Now, wait a second. With all this music, with all the syncing up of the musical score and everything, was this meant to be noticed, or was this meant to be just something in the background? Because, when I heard music in the film, but very little, and I even knew you had mentioned this to me before. So when I was watching the film, I had in the back of my head, okay, the score of the film kind of enhances the mood. But I'm going to be real honest with you. I didn't notice music at all during most scenes. which tells me that it was so well tied into what was happening that it was there. But in your psyche, you're just like, it just feels normal. It feels natural because it's going with how they're talking and how they're acting.
The funny thing is, the YouTube video I pulled this from, which I guess the guy's a musical major, he really breaks this down. I'm going to have the notes all on the website with the episode talking, linking to this.
Mm-hmm.
But the guy actually breaks down how the movie, it's so synced up that you can't even imagine the movie without it, because he plays a scene of Danny rolling through the Overlook on his trike without the music. And it's just, him, rolling around. You can hear the sounds of the track on the, which they even synced up, or they made different parts of that movie that sync up too, because there's a rug, there's bare floor, there's a rug, there's bare floor, and every time, and that syncs up with the music perfectly every time that he hits that hard surface.
I didn't even know there was music in that scene. I thought it was just him rolling through. Did you notice music?
Yeah, that was the whole thing. The music builds the entire movie.
I know it is, but for majority of the movie, even knowing this information, watching it last night, I did not notice a lot of music.
The movie itself isn't really scary when you really think about it. It's all the clip.
The intensity that gets built?
Yeah, and that's all done through music.
I'm aware of that, and I did hear the music.
So subconsciously being built.
No, and yes, and I am aware of that, and I noticed music only when I knew something's about to happen, like when Danny's getting ready to walk into 237, when he's getting ready to see the twins, when something high anxiety is about to happen. Yes, I noticed it, but
even when high anxiety is not about to happen,
I didn't notice music at all.
Like like all of a sudden, like something seems like it's going to happen, and then it says Tuesday.
Yeah,
but all the audio build up to just saying Tuesday it's enough to build your suspense.
Yeah.
And there's tons of times where nothing happens other than it's clipping to the next day. I'm sure
if I watched the film, I am positive if I watched the film without music, I would notice a difference.
Well, last night you're like falling asleep last night.
That was like towards the end of the film, though. Spoiler alert, major snooze fest, everyone. No, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, if I were to watch this film without the music, I'm sure I would notice and be like, well, this fucking sucks. But watching the film and knowing what I knew about the music, I'm telling you, I didn't notice a lot of musical score. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
He shows that scene with the Grady twins or at the end of the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows it without the music and he shows it with, and it's so even when Danny rounds the corner and right before the twins are even revealed to the audience, you have that big rush of the composition they're playing in the background that lets you know that you're about to see something horrific, even as Danny sees it. It's like bam, bam, like the audience and the character gets to, realize it at the same time.
Did you send that YouTube link to me?
Leads you into that. Yeah, I'll send that.
Okay, send that to me because I'm gonna have to compare the two because I know I'll notice a difference, but I was trying to know. You know me with every film that we watch. I always try to notice the score, and it's very rare that I do. So
I don't know how you didn't notice it.
It's a Llareyna thing.
But that's what builds the entire suspense of the movie.
I'm aware of that.
Here's the interesting thing about that Danny and Jack scene, which is creepy in many ways when we start discussing these other theories, where they're in the room together and he's got Danny on his lap and he's talking to him. That scene was Kubrick originally intended for that scene to be totally without music at all. Whenever the editor was doing the cut of the movie, he went back through there, and when he's adding that Bartok composition piece to other parts of the movie, he just so happened to notice how much it synced up with that scene that he added it in. That was something he noticed after, and it was just such a perfect fit that it works. It's almost supernatural that it worked the way that it did in the movie. He happened upon it. Kind of like the whole thing about the Wizard of Oz and Dark Side of the Moon type of syncing up. It was one of those moments.
Yeah.
See, the part when they're in the room together, Jack and his son, that part was creepy for the reason that I think what's supposed to be happening is that his son can read his dad's mind, and he realizes holy shit, this dude's going off the deep end. That's the way I was viewing it. Is if he has The Shining, then he does have the ability to reach into people's mind to a degree. And
if you go by that theory, we'll get into that it may not be the case, but yeah, if he has the shine, then that's what he's supposed to be seeing. And yes, and it's funny in that scene, he's asking his dad about sleeping, and his dad says that he can't sleep. And it's funny that the sequel is called Dr. Sleep, and Danny is Dr. Sleep, and that's what his title becomes later on in life. So it's kind of weird that moment, kind of leads into the sequel in a roundabout sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, the sequel probably, they obviously worked itself around that really well.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and King, despite his hatred for it, he worked that into it. So I think, now the other thing is too, is that Kubrick used the music in another way to distance the audience from what was happening on screen. And what I mean by that is that there were several scenes shot in the movie where the music they played, and in particular the hotel dance scene where Jack is in the ballroom and all the guests are there.
Yeah.
The music that they shot for Nicholson to play in the background while he was doing the scene is not the music they used in the film. They completely cut that music out, and they introduced that one piece that's in the movie, kind of that old 1920s.
Yes.
And I wished I remembered but they've reused that song actually even in Toy Story 3 of all things. It was like playing during the creepy doll section of that movie or whatever when they're in the that part of the movie. But I mean, that was worked in after, and the fact that the audience is seeing him dancing to a song that wasn't even a song he was dancing to begin with adds, a lot of people point out that it adds to the whole thing that, or is what you're seeing actually what is going on in the movie, or are you being fed a narrative that's maybe not, told by a reliable narrator, basically, is what they're saying.
I think the song is called Midnight, the Stars and You.
Yes.
It's a foxtrot type song.
So it kind of lends credence to the fact that, what you're seeing or what, Jack might be seeing is not exactly what the truth is. And that, the fact that he's swaying to a song that's not a song that's actually there, and you're listening to music that wasn't there whenever he was listening to it. It's like 2 or 3 layers of unreliable narrator at that point.
Yeah.